A man who procrastinates in his choosing will inevitably have his choice made for him by circumstance. Hunter S. Thompson.
Eventually have to restart. And as Mr. Lord Blankfein from Goldman Sachs said, we can't continue to be printing money. That violates a number of principles of fiscal and monetary process, which are the fundamental piece of the Satoshi Nakamoto piece that bill.
Dollar is about 3/4 of international, one leg of about 3/4 of international transactions settles in dollars. That goes through New York. That gives the US incredible soft power. It does.
Absolutely. No question about it.
Blockchain as we know it with the start of Bitcoin. Yeah. So on this second stage, what we're trying to do is connect those things. And we have some lofty goals, but we have started to partner with other institutions.
So the question is, you don't have to replace all of that to have an impact on the US. What happens if 2%, 5%, 10% of those international transactions start to get settled in another? Let's just, for sake of argument, let's say a Chinese digital currency, just to heighten the differences. Once 5-10% of that begins to be settled, then you have an issue. And actually,
and we think that the future looks very bright if we can actually embrace technology.
Yeah, definitely.
Cryptocurrency puts the power of currency back in the people's hands. Anyone, and I mean anyone, could create a cryptocurrency right now. Is it really that crazy to think that other countries in the world want to use something other than the US dollar?
He didn't mention it, but Larry Summers was part of a war game last year. They ran a war game out of the Berkman Center, I think, looking at the impact of Chinese digital currency on the US dollar.
The smartest minds in the world have thought out every action and reaction scenario that there is. They ran war games on what and how they will go about things if China released their CBDC, and China released their CBDC. There is a game plan. This is not by chance. These are well thought out moves. I believe Ripple is involved in some of these reaction type scenarios.
And I can't remember the outcomes weren't good. I don't remember exactly what. I remember the North Koreans bought nuclear weapons. Which
that's right. It was very dramatic, as I recall.
That's bad, right? That's yeah. So whichever way you cut it, it doesn't need much of a shift to become a serious issue. So that's why I'm arguing that the UK, the US, the West should have a digital currency policy, even though I'm not smart enough to know what that policy should be.
You're watching the game plan unfold in front of you. The game is rigged. The actions, the people involved, the politics, they want it to look like it's a natural evolution, but it's not. There was a predetermined plan, and Ripple was involved from the very beginning.
Including China. Right. It's interesting. China could have made a decision at the dawn of the internet to say, nope, we're not going to be part of that. We're going to have our own internet. We'll have two of them. The world would have split apart. That didn't happen because they saw it was in their interests, because of globalization benefited China to be part of the main system, even if the stewardship of it, was a great deal in the U.S. and its allies, the West. That's the same thing we face today. I would argue that it's not just important for the U.S. to maintain sort of stewardship of the next-gen financial system. I'd actually argue it's better for everybody, including China. And I think if we play our cards right, like I know we're in this tech Cold War now, but that's going to pass 5-10 years, about who knows how long. But I think we can get to a place where China would be comfortable, and then the world is kind of organized in a single system again.
A blockchain-based financial system where the rules of the game are built into the system.
But it is true that the China CBDC may set standards for technology in this area, and by being a first mover, they get to be included in global standard setting, which is important.
We are in a technological Cold War. China's CBDC has systems and infrastructure being built around it, and it's going to progress at a rapid pace. The U.S. knows this. Has the U.S. ever stayed impotent in the name of a foreign threat? The U.S. has think tanks that understand this problem better than anyone. I think Ripple board members were in some of these think tanks. The Titans have ironed out their deal, and this is the rollout. Otherwise, there would have been bloodshed. None of this is just happening by accident. The U.S. is well aware.
Magazine said America has weaponized the financial system. In other words, using sanctions and other forms of soft power through that monitoring and surveillance, while it might support things we're in favor of, actually, potentially begins to drive people away from that very system.
Ripple's escrow function is very interesting in these times. As central bankers lose their discipline, autonomous monetary policy becomes more attractive.
And what makes that tricky, particularly in the context of blockchain technology or next generation blockchains like Ethereum, is that many of these systems are fairly autonomous in nature. Not completely autonomous, but once they're released, it's kind of hard to put the cat back in the bag or the genie back in the bottle. And that makes it challenging as well. So you have this system where
the Bitcoin back in the wallet.
Yeah, put the Bitcoin back in. But you have a system where, it exists everywhere and nowhere at the same time. You have rules related to that system that are hard to change once they're deployed. It's possible to change them, but it's more difficult.
All of the proof of concepts, all the testing is necessary. As he stated, once the genie is out of the bottle, you can't put it back in.
I think it's a long shot. I think it's a very long shot, because I don't think there's the necessary political roots of consensus on how there would be global governance of a major currency. I don't think anybody's going to entrust that level of responsibility to the IMF or to an institution like it, or certainly not to the United Nations.
The beauty of virtual currencies is we don't have to trust anyone. We trust math. We can build conditions into our money. The governments of this world can use this so they don't have to trust each other. The escrow feature will be very useful in the times ahead.
And I bet that does involve blockchain technology, interoperability protocols, central bank digital currencies from all the major areas, with probably a virtual currency acting as the bridge, right? Because it's neutral, and it doesn't carry, to your point, it doesn't carry not only the capital controls and the various, rules of, let's say, U.S. Treasury, for example.
The central banks are going to print to oblivion. They will print so much that there will be a problem. And lo and behold, the internet of value will emerge when everyone is scared.
But the relationship with COVID is that COVID has it's kind of accelerated the transition. It hasn't like changed the direct. It's like pushed us downhill, but we were going in that direction anyway. So we're going over to digital currency one way or another.
Anything the Treasury issues, the Fed buys. The Fed and the Treasury have become one under the COVID crisis,
which we had a major experience with unanchored money in the 1970s, and a very broad social lesson was learned. And so I think there will be closer relations between treasuries and central banks. But
a central bank digital currency that the central bank issues.
And I think the experience is that currencies are like languages. Once they become established in having a global role, there tends to be a lot of persistence just because of the network effect. So Mark could be right. He's certainly visionary on this.
Mark Carney is right about the synthetic hegemonic currency. They're intentionally crashing the system for a reset.
But also doesn't carry, and this is much less the case in the U.S., right? Because it's a liberal economy, right? It's exporting. Hey, everybody's free to do what they want to do economically. It doesn't carry a lot of weight to other countries where a virtual currency doesn't have any of that, right? Because there's no counterparty at all. So virtual currencies will be really key in that kind of a world. But again, imagine if, really bad if China says, hey, well, you're going to have your system, we'll have ours. Bad for everybody. World gets smaller, gets more dangerous. And really bad if China controls the infrastructure.
There is a next-gen financial system. It's on its way. All nations will operate on this system.
Completely obvious to me why New York uses the US dollar, given that the economy of New York is almost entirely unrelated to the economy of large parts of the US. You might have maybe there'll be a global Islamic currency that everybody wants to use. There's a billion people using that. Maybe we'll all just get fed up with using the dollar because of all the stupid rules and things, and we'll just use Chinese digital currency instead. So saying that I firmly believe there will be a digital dollar, there will be a central bank digital currency, but that's not the same as saying that will be the only currency and that's what everybody will use.
It will be a religious war, a sort of Christian jihad, fueled by religious hatred and led by merciless fanatics on both sides. It will be guerrilla warfare on a global scale, with no front lines and no identifiable enemy. Hunter S. Thompson. Thank you for liking and subscribing. If you enjoy my work, please consider joining my Patreon.